Hi, I am Erica T. Worth, author of the Indigenous literary horror novel White Horse, which is out now with Flatiron Macmillan. And it is about Carrie, who is an urban Indian woman who loves heavy metal and loves horror, but despises her mother because she believes that her mother abandoned her when she was 2 days old. And when her cousin Debbie discovers an ancient bracelet of her mother's, and Carrie touches the bracelet, her mother's ghost begins to haunt Carrie, and a monster invades her dreams. And Carrie decides that she needs to find out what happened to her mother after all. And some of the inspiration for this novel is urban Indian life in Denver, Colorado. And it's also just, my love of heavy metal and horror, which was something where I went to school in Idaho Springs, people loved. And it's also a love song to old Denver.
Hey, it's Well Red Beard. I appreciate you being here. I'm back full time on my channel. I would love for you to come over and subscribe. Just search Well Red Beard on YouTube. I delve deep into horror. I've spent the last 3 years reading a ton of independent small press horror. There's treasure to be found there, and I go out there and find it for you. I'm not afraid to tell you the books that aren't great while telling you the books that are great. I don't break hearts or hurt feelings, but if a book doesn't work for me, I will tell you that, and I'll tell you why. I'm on a new mission now to go back and dig into some great horror from the 80s and 90s. I'm working my way through Robert McCammon's books. I'm going to look at all of Peter Straub's work. I'm going to do Brian Keene. I've got aspirations to go back and do J.F. Gonzalez, a lot of the greats, so you have a good idea of where to start. I have a video up for J.F. Gonzalez's Survivor, so you can see what all the fuss is about. I recently read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, so you can see what all the fuss is about. I just want you to come over and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the thing. I appreciate you taking a look at it. This is Well Red Beard. I hope you're enjoying all your books as much as I am. If not, you're reading the wrong damn books.
Cynthia Pelayo. I'm not sure if you heard that.
Hey, Cena.
I meant to tell you happy belated birthday. Thank you.
Ronnie, you're not supposed to be here.
I have a picture. I found the picture of me and you, Brennan, from Merrimack.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That was crazy. That was like it was nonstop. Like I didn't have an opportunity to talk to anybody. I just kept
I'm in a school with 500 kids all day every day, and that was still too busy for me. I'm still like socially recovering from that.
Really, I really wanted to go. It was like the same weekend as Multiverse. And I'm on the, I'm one of the programming track directors there. So I was like, I can't bail on Multiverse, but one day I'm gonna get to Merrimack. It just seems like a good time, even if I have to sort of, like go as just a reader. I think that might be better because that going nonstop, that crowd stuff is kind of a lot sometimes.
It's fast. It's a short day, but you did Halloween. How was Halloween Hangover?
Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. It was like a perfect balance between, first of all, it was in a bookstore. I was like, how perfect is that? The people they come for books. Who'd have thunk it, right? And so a lot of the people were regular customers who were excited to see that spotlight. And there were just enough panels, there were just enough authors that it really only felt like a party. So I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel, like it was just too much. I think it was just right. It was just right.
It looked fun. It looked like a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, it was such a great time.
We're gonna be like, what is going on in Cena's house? Fine. Everything is
haunted.
fine.
How to sell a haunted house. Grady Henry.
Yes, have visitors.
This is what, but I'm happy it went well, Rhonda.
Yeah, it went well. I think the main thing was that it was organized with such care. Tiffany and James are the managers of that Barnes and Noble. I mean, they really reached out and they really put that together. And so they were saying that they're actually talking with their corporate office on sort of a template for those kind of events for other stores. And I was like, I love it. Like, I would love to see that. Like in all the genres, of course, specifically horror, but in all the genres, that would be wonderful.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be good.
You guys want to get started?
Yes.
Okay.
You mean this doesn't count?
No, I mean, like, I'll put some of it up, but it's fine.
I've been hanging out here. I'm like banging on my wall. My light's falling down. People are like, "This house is falling apart."
Yeah. The ceiling collapses. We know we're done.
Yeah.
It's over.
Alrighty. Welcome to Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFargo. Did I get that right?
Wrong. That is not right.
Say hi, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are joined by a returning co-host, RJ Joseph. Say hello, Rhonda.
Hey.
And we are talking long overdue. We are talking to someone that all three of us love dearly, Cynthia Pelayo. We'll call her Cena, if that's okay, throughout the interview. Say hello, Cena.
Hi. Hi, friends.
Hello. As you can see, I have my Cena collection. It's not big enough yet.
That's Cena, like,
Yes.
And, and that one, the Campfire Macabre, was
was good.
You forwarded that.
Rhonda too, right?
I think Rhonda's in that.
Yeah, that first one. Yeah, I didn't sub to the second one, but I'm in the first one. Yeah, a lot of fun.
It was really cool. That was my first pro sale, and Cena forwarded it, and it was a lot of awesome people in it. I just had to point that out. Why someone would be like, "Why is that there? That's not Cena." It is.
It totally is.
So, Cena, what got you into horror? Left turn.
Tell me about your childhood. That's what,
what fucked you up? No.
Okay.
That's what Stephen King says when people ask him that. That's what they really mean. That's not what I really mean, though. I just want to know what you are.
It was A Nightmare on Elm Street. My brother. This was like 1980. I'm gonna date myself because whatever. This was like in 1986, I think. And my brother, maybe 87. Well, because A Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 84, and so my brother rented it at the video store. And so it must have been like 85 or 86. I feel like it was 85 because I think I was 5 years old. And my parents left somewhere. My oldest brother put it in the big floor television with the VCR, and he popped it in, and I walked in, and I saw that on the screen of the big wooden television set. The image when Freddy Krueger, when his arms were extended in the alley, that was the very first image I ever saw.
Oh.
And I remember screaming and running into the kitchen. And then my brother was like, "It's fine, you should watch it. It's okay, it's not real, it's not real." And then I was like, okay. And then I went and I watched it with him, the rest of it with him. And then from there, I would watch... Then I started watching like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone with my dad, because he would watch those late at night, and then they would show like Psycho late at night, like on the old, would watch it like on the old, the television stations. The television stations. This is back then. We didn't have like cable back in like 85 or 86, right? And so. Just with my dad and my brother. They were the ones that got me into horror. And because of them, I mean, my mother thought it was very deviant. It was like deviant. It was something that unwell. And she went and talked to the priest about it. Like, talked to the priest. And then the priest had to come to the house to talk to me about the scary things that I was watching and how it was a gateway and it wasn't good. So there was that shame factor from my mom that I got, but my dad and my brother were like, "Leave her alone. She really likes this." And so then my dad eventually bought me, I had my own little black and white television. It was like what he got cheap in the secondhand. So I had my own little black and white television set in my room, and I would watch horror there. And then eventually he bought me like a VCR at the secondhand, and we would go to the video store, my dad's like, "You could rent whatever you want." And so it was my dad. So, and he's been, he's still around, thank goodness. And I, showed him the announcement for my recent deal, and the old man started crying because he remembers. He's like, "She loved monsters. She's always loved monsters, and now she's making monsters." And so it was really touching to see to see it really dawn on my parents, like, oh, she's really it never went away. She's 42. There you go. And it just never went away, and it just never went away. But
That's amazing. One of you two, please jump in.
I love the full circle aspect. That was, that like you said, it was very touching. I'm actually curious if you remember or would be willing to share a little bit more about that conversation with the priest. Um, what was that like? That sounds so awkward.
which conversation?
The conversation with the priest about exercising your demons, about liking horror.
It was. I mean, they would say things. I remember. I mean, we had like younger priests, and they were kind of cool, and they kind of got, the stuff. But they were just like, well, it was always your mom is worried. Your mom thinks this is too much at this age. Your mom doesn't want these images to like make you sick and make you upset. And that's how they approached it.
Mm.
And I think it's just they were like younger and they were just like, oh my gosh, the mom's probably upset. But it wasn't like the old. It wasn't like the older priests who probably would have been like, this is evil. This isn't.
That's 100% the image that got planted in my head, is somebody flicking holy water at you.
Yeah, no, I remember it was the younger cool ones that were like, that wound up eventually doing like my confirmation years later. And they were just like, yeah, your mom. Your mom is just worried, and but it's fine. Like they thought it was, the ones that I talked to, at least I remember they were like, it was always your mom is worried. This is too much this age. But it was especially in the 80s when there was like this horror renaissance. And looking at it now at what was going on with the satanic panic, at least it was nice that at least I'm not in the church anymore, but the people in the church that I spoke to at that age were pretty progressive. At least it was nice that was
Absolutely
close to that, and not like it was like a scary thing. I mean, I left the church for like other reasons. I mean, I wanted to become a nun. I was really religious. I was really,
Wow.
I was like, Catholicism was very important for me for a very long time. And I just loved that imagery, just the icons and the ritual. And I just felt like it was so beautiful and magical. But yeah, I mean, I eventually separated, and I'm just I'm agnostic now, which is, I'm okay admitting that. It took me a while to kind of be like quiet about it, because my family would get really upset. But they're okay with it now.
It's great. I just feel like this is a neat time to just read Janine's comment. I know you already seen it, but for those that haven't, she said, please just tell Cena thank you for the endless support and that I love her. She's a role model and an icon, a pillar and an inspiration, a wonderful, beautiful, crazily talented human. Just pretend that I'm smiling as big as Janine normally would.
You people are gonna make me cry. Like it's, it's I admit I haven't been around on social media a lot the last couple. I've been suffering from exhaustion. Like it's like legitimate at this point. Like there's no. I kept thinking like, well, maybe it's a cold, and maybe it's like another kid virus, and maybe it's. And then a friend of mine was like, I think it's just I think you legitimately have exhaustion, and because it's just the markers of what you're experiencing. And so it was heartwarming to see like Janine's comment, but then I felt so bad because I'm like, I haven't been on social media, I haven't been active the last few weeks, just because I'm really, I think I've done a number on myself. Just like for people that don't know, I have two children that are on the spectrum, and then I work full time. I'm trying to finish a PhD, and then I write at night. So it's just been, it's all my worlds have started colliding, and it's been a lot of work. And as people with children on the spectrum know, it's they have really 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 great days, and they have tough days. And so we had some recent like tough days, but it was nice to hear from Janine. I hope to continue doing good things for good people in the horror community, because it's the people in this community 100%. like, like Rhonda has been like, a force for me. And I'm so glad that she's here because, Rhonda and I've gone through it and we've talked about what it's like to the whole submission and the rejection, and then Rhonda's thoughts on the female character being explored as a monster and a monstrosity. Like, this is like brilliant discussions that need to be had. Like, and she's an academic, and she takes it from this academic approach, and she looks at it through the the lens also of a horror writer. And so, her and I have had so many discussions about that. I mean, I've seen Brennan. Brennan's on his second, third published novel. And
Who can keep track of these things?
In a collection.
It's wonderful to see. It's wonderful that I've been able to see people achieve their goals, and I just feel like, look, I don't want anything from anyone other than to just be like, I am here, I'm your cheerleader, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to cry in your pillow because you got that other rejection, and that you knew you were gonna hit it and you didn't hit it. I know what it's like. I know. I've been there, and I'm still kind of recuperating from this like crazy speed I was at, but I really want to make sure I'm still mentoring at some capacity, because I've done a lot of that, and I think it's important because I am here today because I had really good mentors.
Yeah. Real quick, I just want to throw out, because that whole like wonderful little diatribe started by talking about Janine, and she had mentioned, she had announced earlier today that she is directing a movie or a short film. I'm not sure which. And I think anybody who knows her saw that coming. But oh man, good for her. So good for her. The other thing I wanted to throw out is, we were talking before we started recording about that you and I got to meet up at Merrimack. And I had to get you to sign my copy of Children of Chicago. And the whole day was a whirlwind. And I got home and I'm looking through the way too many books that I, brought home with me. And inside of Children of Chicago, you wrote, I can't wait to continue seeing your star rise. And I remember texting Patrick, and I can't even tell you how much that little inscription just meant to me. It just put this glowing smile on my face, like, here's a writer who is doing big things, whose work I have just this massive amount of respect for, who sees me over here in my corner doing my thing and is proud of me. And oh my gosh, that feeling.
I'm proud of you. I've seen it. I've seen the tweets. I've seen the struggle. But I've seen the good tweets too. I've seen the, here's how it's doing on Amazon. I see that stuff. I see it.
The only reason I'm working on.
I don't want people to know I'm like online.
Just creeping and sneaking.
I'm making some real progress. This is about you, by the way. I'm making some real progress on a novella that I wrote in 2016, haven't touched since, and I'm just red inking the shit out of it, and it's turning out really good, and I'm submitting it to that guy right there because he said I can, and I only thought of that because of your novella. I'm like, hey, Paul, are you doing any more? If I never saw that, if I never bought it, so, I mean, you influence people in all these fun ways.
Yeah. I was gonna say that, and in authentic ways. Like, that's really important. From the moment that I met you, Cena, you have been authentic. And that's a really hard thing for people to do. Like, you kind of get these syrupy sweet, or you kind of get these pretend, yeah, I'm happy for you, but really no, I'm not. But you came out the gate like just authentically happy and supportive. I mean, and that just really means a ton. It really means a lot to me, and I mean, apparently to others in this community. So I appreciate that, because I know it's not easy. It's not easy to uphold other people, right? But you do it so effortlessly and so authentically.
you know, like I've said before, I don't want anything other than people to feel good. That's it. Like I really just, I feel like if we all feel good and we're all happy and we're all doing what we do that we enjoy, it's a benefit for all of us, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really a benefit for all of us. And you know, I remember, you know, coming up in the horror community in the earlier days, and it was a little hard. It was a little tough there. You know, but there were a lot of really nice people. A lot of like, you know, Peter Straub is an example where it was like he at that time when I met him in 2011 had no business to stand and take some moments with me and tell me, you know, keep going, just keep going, just don't stop. You're doing okay. You're doing it. You're writing and you're doing it. And I just remember being blown away. Like this was at the I forgot what they used to call it, the World Horror. They used to call it was still the Bram Stoker Awards, and it was right after he won an award, and he's over here chatting with me. I'm like, I had no major writing credits, and I'm just like, wow, that was that. I remember that, and I remember how he made me feel in that moment, and I believe that what we will remember most about people is how they made us feel. You know, of course, what they did, and but there's something to. I will remember how you made me feel, and I think that's so. I want to be remembered as the person that someone I made them feel good. You know, I don't want them to be like, "See, it was all me." I don't get that. I don't get how people function that way or kind of move through the world that way. It's sad, and you know, we're creators, and I don't see a hierarchy. I see we're all artists in my eyes. We're artists, we're creating, and that's magic. Who can do that? Who can sit there and be like, I'm gonna take this blank page and I'm gonna create a universe on it? That's we're magicians, people. We're very it's a very special skill that we have, and I think we have to be confident and acknowledge that it's pretty cool what we do.
Yeah, I agree. Peter did have that. That's he grew really
Other
up.
people.
He's one of my favorite writers, and he grew quickly in my heart because of that, because of the way he made you feel. And he just, for some reason, globally, on a general reader point of view, I don't think is as talked about as much. She is amongst our our writer groups and stuff, but it's very odd how his movies aren't adapted like Stephen King's. That part I don't get.
Yeah, I don't know. I know what you mean. That there are a lot. There are. I mean, at that point, it's all business. It's all like because Hollywood is a whole different. That's a whole different world than publishing. We think navigating the world of publishing is complicated. Film and television is a whole other. It's very different, and so there's so many creators out there that we're just like. I mean, we've been talking about it forever. Like we need more representation, not just in horror, but like in multiple avenues. But it's the same things keep getting made over and over again. So um, I would love to see a wider range of horror adapted. It has to like we have. There's so many streaming services, and we see the numbers. We see who goes to the box office. We see young people and people of color, and you know, we it's a range of people. And horror is doing. This is all I was interviewed recently for the Chicago Tribune, and I said we are in a horror renaissance right now. If you this is it. We're living it right now, and it's a pretty exciting time. And if you're a horror writer, there's so many places that are publishing exciting work. And I think the indies, we could talk about Twitter too, because the indies are it's an amazing place, and there's a lot of experimentation there, and the diversity in the indies is like amazing. There's no look at in
This book right here. This book right here is everywhere. Erica T. Worth.
the sweep the awards. I feel like I have this really good like spidey sense about Erica Worth in this novel. This is this it's everywhere, and it's we need more diverse voices and diversity within horror because we're seeing some really great stories being explored, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's really exciting what we're seeing. A lot of cool stuff in horror. Like I can't keep up. I want to read everything.
Yeah. You really, I mean, it's impossible. If you did this full time, there is no way you could keep up with even half the amount of
Yeah.
people.
I'll say also, like, not just young people. I am gonna definitely continue. Brian Keene has talked about this, and I've talked about this. We cannot forget the older horror writers. You have people like Ron Kelly. It's like he's still creating work, and it's been discussed like in film and television. Older actors. Well, what about older writers? Like we need to like also recognize them. And I've seen so many people like on Twitter be like, I'm 25 and I haven't published a novel yet. Is my life over? I'm like, what? What?
Sit down, young person. Let's talk.
It's okay.
I'm going on my 10th year in writing, and I'm okay that I haven't published anything beyond short stories. You know why? Because, and I've noticed it with a lot of other people that have made it big, that you need a little life experience, and you get it. Like, who was it? Dean Koontz. When we had Kevin J. Anderson on last episode, his mentor was Dean Koontz, and Dean Koontz said that the first million words you write is the practice words. If you get paid for your practice words, that's great. Dean Koontz, yeah. And I thought that was really smart. I have not heard that quote up until Kevin told us that, and it makes sense. I think was that like full novels? That would be 10 novels, give or take, around there. I mean, that to me that makes sense, and I'm actually curious what Cena and then Rhonda and Brennan, what you guys think about that.
Brennan, you go first. I'm gonna hear you.
Brennan, I
Oh,
meant
rude.
Brennan go first.
I mean, all right. I think it's definitely whether you can put a number on it or not. And hey, if there was somebody who could put a number on it, Dean Koontz is not a bad guy to ask. I think that there is value in the experience of not necessarily writing, knowing that you're not going to publish something, but being able to kind of put things aside. I say all the time, I mean, one of the first thing I wrote was Slattery Falls, and the second, third, and fourth was like 170 something thousand word novel that you and I wrote together, and I learned so much from that. And I learned so much that allowed me to go on to other projects and write things and not avoid mistakes, but at least make less mistakes and know how to fix those mistakes a little quicker, from writing just these copious words that mix like a multitude of genres. I think there's a lot of value in writing and writing and writing and writing, and not necessarily just trying to shoot the first thing that comes out of your computer into the world.
Rhonda.
I totally agree with that. I don't know that there's a certain number that I would put on it. I guess just because the idea of writing like 10 novels just kind of makes my stomach hurt. But I mean,
it's a lot.
Just, not that I wouldn't try at some point, but that's a lot. But like Brennan said, though, it's that practice makes perfect. I mean, to be very cliche, like you can't just expect to just plunk out some words that are going to be perfect and sparkly and glittery and not have actually not practiced those words. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people practice in their heads. I tend to be a head drafter. Like I will sit with a story for years before it actually makes it like onto the computer or onto the paper. But even in doing that, I'm still playing with the words in my head. I'm still practicing them. And so, like I tell my students, you can't expect to get good at anything if you're not willing to put in the time and be willing to learn and always improve. Like you just won't. It just won't happen.
I like the idea of, I mean, we have to, it's okay to just write. It's okay just to enjoy the process of writing. And it's okay to finish something that you're really confident in and let it sit. We live in this instant gratification moment where we need everything recognized. Um, and so it's okay to let the manuscript sit there for a little bit before you start submitting it or searching for an agent. I mean, you can move on to the next project. Um, it's and you might, at least Children of Chicago was, it's funny, it was actually three different books. Like, I had written like three different books. They were all kind of different, but then there was elements of them that I eventually then tied all together. Um, and so I have multiple books that I've just written that just have never seen the light of day, maybe because they're not fully fleshed out, but there's a lot of good ideas there that I can come back to. I saw Haley Piper said in an interview for Trans Awareness Week, and the HWA was hosting it. And one of the things she had said was, I think they asked, was it some writing advice? And one thing she says is, she's like, write all your ideas down, right? Because you never know. She's like, no matter how ridiculous it is, write your all. I was like, that's so good. Like, it happens to me all the time. I have a great idea, and I'm like, I'm not gonna write that. But I'm like, just write it down. You never know. It's a really great. Put it all in your notes app, and then, yeah, even your note. We have our notes app. We have all different types of devices. You can like jot down like little vignettes here and there. It doesn't have to be a fully fleshed out piece, but just keep writing. You read a lot, write a lot, and then reading different things. You start kind of seeing what you. It's good to read. I personally think it's good to read things you're not crazy about, because then you read it and you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't like it. It's okay. And it's okay. It's okay. Like, I've read books. Maybe I haven't read the whole book, but I've read like parts of books, and I'm like, that might have been popular, and I'm like, I don't get it. I just don't vibe with the story or the pace, but it's nice to know, like, yeah, I wouldn't do something like this. And I see how popular it is with the audience, but even though it's popular, I'm not going to replicate that, because that's just not true to who I am. You have to be true to who you are as an author. You have to.
Sure.
Because if you're writing something that makes you miserable, guess what? You're not putting the right energy into the work. You have to put yourself into the work. That's what, when people come to Rhonda's work, they want Rhonda's work. They want her. They don't want someone else. When people come to Brennan's work, they're looking for Brennan. And so I think we have to remind ourselves that in this day and age where we're comparing ourselves to everybody, it's okay to just be ourselves and write what you like.
I heard from this writer that his friend wrote to basically, I think it was his agent that wanted him to try to write this at the time popular fantasy, and he did it. Didn't love doing it, and he did a good job. So good of a job that he got a few more offers for 2 or 3 more contracts, and he got a lot of money for it. But guess what? He hated it. Hated writing them. And I'm not even sure he ended up finishing them. That part I can't remember, but that's not really the point. The point is the money's good and all, but like, if you're not enjoying it at all, like, that's kind of what you get a question, because time you don't get back.
Yeah,
Rhonda, I'd like to hear you take us in a new direction.
I'm curious to see how, Sina, you're an academic, also, how does your academic work inform your writing? Like,
so my forever in progress doctorate deals with, it's in business psychology. So my focus is understanding how people work within systems. So it's a lot of it's psychology. It's a doctorate in psychology. So I do gravitate more towards psychological horror and our motivations for why we do things. And I've been enjoying exploring like this gray space where good people do bad things sometimes, or people will do things under certain conditions, and they probably wouldn't have done those things before. So I've been exploring that a lot. I did explore true crime quite a bit, with like Into the Forest and all the way through, and then Crime Scene. I think exploring true crime was a little too difficult for me. I think it was too painful for me, and so I backed away from it. Children of Chicago was exploring youth and inner city crime, and like our the conversation with law enforcement that we have, and people in positions of power and how they take advantage of certain situations. And so, which was a very difficult novel for many reasons. So I've explored some things that have been painful to explore. Although recently my my upcoming works are a completely different approach, and I am exploring love.
No.
I've got,
Okay.
yeah,
I love it.
so I've gotten sentimental with age. So exploring what people would do for love and human connection. That's where I pivoted. Everybody, I don't know what happened. I was all angry and mean, and now it's like I want to talk about love and beautiful. But yeah, that's I can't say much, but Funeral at Clark Street Bridge is a love horror story. It's a gothic novel. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, that's where my thoughts are going, right? I mean, because romance and horror are actually Gothic siblings. And I think a lot of times people forget that. But romance and horror both sprung from the Gothic writing. And so, yeah, it kind of makes sense that we would walk those lines between the both of those. Like, I'm excited to see what that's all about.
I want to explore. I mean, I think I want to explore that more. Like, especially because I've seen people yearning for human connection. Like, we are so connected digitally, but then we're so lonely, right? I feel like so many people are really lonely, and so there's this anger and this loneliness and this disconnect from one another. And I want to be able to explore things that are gentle and kind, and but with heart. With, what would you do in order to have that? What would you do in order to keep that? Yeah, that's where I've been. That's where my brain has been lately. And I don't know. The Shoemaker's Magician, that's out from Polis. They're going to push back the launch date from from February to March, and that one is a mother's love. What would a mother do? What are the lengths a mother would go to for her child? And I do my dissertation is on deals with people on the autism spectrum, and I wrote my first ever character on the autism spectrum in the Shoemaker's Magician, and so I am very nervous how it's going to be received. Because I wanted to be as respectful as possible to this group, and I modeled a character after my son, a 9-year-old. So we'll see. I know it's tricky, it's touchy, and it's tricky to write about a disabled group. So I'm curious to see what people think.
I'm sure it's brilliant because you are.
I approached it from love. I approached the character from love. I modeled him as much after my son as I could.
I would anticipate some idiots saying something, but fuck them, because they don't know you. If people actually knew you, then they no people that know you won't attack you because they know your heart. That's my opinion. Someone that cares about you, that's because I don't want you getting upset over it because it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, and I would like to see all, and on that note, I would also like to see more disabled characters in horror. I don't see many disabled characters in horror. I would really like to see that explored more.
Brennan, tell me to cut this if you want, but I asked Brennan about Slattery Falls, and I won't name it, but there is that in Slattery Falls, and it's not super noticeable. Brennan, again, tell me to cut this if you want. I'm not going to name it.
No, you're fine. That book's been out a while, and we've talked about this subject before on the show. So
okay, I don't remember, dude. We've talked. This is like over 300 running hours now, so I don't remember most stuff I say the next day, you know. But I asked him about that, and Brendan, take over because it's your character. I want to hear what I'm allowed to say now. I want to hear it coming out of your mouth.
Oh no, you lead because you clearly have something in mind, and you just threw it to me with like open arms. So
throw a bone. All right,
ahead,
he's got
lead.
an autistic character in Slattery Falls, and very few people, he told me, picked up on it. And I think that's interesting. I think that's the kind of story where if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. And he doesn't come out and say it, but I didn't know it was autism at first, but I thought there was something like tad askew of one of his characters. It's nice seeing that. We talked about that with a few people, and you bring it up too, and I think that is important.
Yeah, I love that people don't really pick up on it, because I mean, this is kind of what we're moving towards with true inclusivity, is that when we can actually look at characters from varying viewpoints and just see them as characters. Like, I really love that. Like, I know Slattery Falls is here in one of these stacks over here around back. And now I'm like even more excited to like bump it up the stack like I'm doing crime scene, because I love that this is almost imperceptible. I mean, I think that I'm really, really excited about this, because I'm going, oh my gosh, because if the character just blends in, then that means that the character was in their natural surroundings. And that means that Brennan, as the creator, did this very realistic world where this is where this character lives. And I just totally dig it. I love it so much.
One that always jumps out at me is Ron Kelly, we mentioned earlier. Was he read the book before it came out, you know, supplied me with my very first blurb on anything ever, and it was a doozy. Very generous with his time. Like, we can never say enough good things about Ron on this show. But he had texted me about halfway through it and said, you know, I'm seeing a lot of my son in this character, you know. And like I said, like Patrick said, it's never explicitly stated, but if you know, you know. And you know, people who have someone that they love who is autistic pick up on it right away. And you know, I've certainly had readers who may just kind of notice some, you know, I see that in my cousin, I see that in my brother, I see that in my son. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of what I wanted to go for with that, is the whole notion of like, I'm not rubbing it in your face. I'm not trying to be like, look at me, I'm, you know, I included this person, but it's just, it's him and the way that he is and the way that he kind of views the world and approaches his interests and his hobbies kind of ends up informing a lot of the story. So, thank you for, you know, that plug, Patrick, but we can absolutely take it back to Cena now.
Ron Kelly. Ron Kelly was here a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. I took my sons to meet him because I wanted my sons to meet him, and so and Ron's wife was there. She looks at my oldest, and she's just like, and she looks over at Ron. She's like, he's just like our son, because I was like, oh yeah. So she was able to, you know, just within that little, as soon as we met, just in that little moment, you know, she knew. She was just like, oh, Ron, he's just like our boy. So
that's cool. What was that like? Did you meet the guys at oh my god, my brain farted. Stygian Sky Media?
Yeah, Jeremy and
yeah.
It was nice. It was, I mean, I couldn't chat too long. That, you know, a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old both in different directions.
Yep.
Nice. I got a couple of Ron's books here. Wait, I have stacks because I'm you know.
Oh yeah.
Cried and horrified, and look at, he drew this for me. But it was nice. It was a nice time. I wasn't there very long, just because it's hard with being out in the world with two small humans with ideas. But it was good. Yeah.
when Phil runs, he runs fast. And one time in Walmart, he turned a corner and couldn't find him for 2 or 3 minutes, and that was the scariest moment in my life because I mean, all you're thinking about is some sick fuck got him because I didn't see him, I couldn't find him. And then two parents were like, "Is this your kid?" You know, we were seeing you looking around, and they're just like, "Oh my god, thank you." Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm just bringing that up because I can't imagine two kids just trying to run two different directions.
Yeah, yeah, they will, one will go this way, the other one will go that way, and you know, one parent darts for the one, and the other parent darts for the other. It's nonstop. I mean, the older one is better. He's like my buddy. Like we'll hang out and watch TV and stuff. But the 5-year-old is he's 5, so he's got places to be.
Cena, what do you hope for your future? Let's throw a random number, 5 years. What do you hope for with your career? By then, will you probably have your doctorate, I would think, too. Well, I don't know. I only have an associate, so that's how far I go. My brain don't go much smarter than that. Like I worded that, Brennan.
I didn't even jump in and correct you. I'm getting better.
This is a real question, though.
Doesn't go, you plebe.
I mean, I would be lying if I said I wouldn't love to do this full time. I admit, it's been hard doing this, you know, at night, and I work 2 full-time jobs, right? I'm like, I finished my day job about 5 or 6. I log off, I grab something to eat, I'll take a nap, and then I'm up, and then I'll write pretty late, and then I go to sleep, and then I'm up to take care of the kids and take them to school. I mean, in a dream world, you know, writing would pay me enough that I could stay home, just, you know, focus on writing books. And I would love that. I would love if I could just create all day. I would love if I could just like roll out of the bed and I am working for myself. Again, that's what you're doing. You're your own boss, and that is like the dream and the goal is to be able to sustain oneself with their own creative vision, and that is definitely my dream. I mean, I'm completely grateful and thankful that Amazon Publishing. I'll be my next 2 novels will be next 2 are coming out with Polis, and then 2024 onward. The next 2 are with Amazon Publishing and Thomas and Mercer. So I'm really excited to be working with them because
that's great.
It's such a great group of people, and I'm just so impressed by them, and I would love to keep working with them and just kind of I mean, my editor is Dean Koontz's editor. Like, what dream world is that? That's like,
whoa, I didn't know that, and that's not why I
that?
brought him up.
Yeah,
Holy shit, that's.
I am like, I can't process it. It makes no sense to me. How does this?
It does to us. Just get over yourself. You're amazing.
Yeah, my editor is Dean Koontz's editor, and I'm like, holy shit.
He can learn something from you.
I'm like,
I hope he doesn't listen to this ever.
I'm like, you know, I have Jess Lowry, who is she's a mystery thriller writer. Not with all things Jess Lowry. She's with my editor as well, and so I am still processing it. You know, and you know, the indies have been great to me. I hope to have more, you know, poetry work coming out through the indies. Things get a little complicated when you get a larger press because things have to kind of get reviewed. But if I can continue to make, you know, publish poetry with the indies, I would love to continue doing that because it's the indies. I'm here because of the indies. I have a readership because of the indies. I have friends. I have a family because of the indies. I mean, you know, I look at, you know, I think of Gabino and V and Rhonda and Gemma and Laurel. It's like all these people. It's like Haley. We all kind of. I feel like we were like a cohort. Like we all were kind of like in our own writing cohort that we created,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
come up together. It's so incredible. It's just this weird timing, and it's nice to see like newer writers, doing work like Brennan. Brennan's not even newer. Brennan's been around now, and Rain King too. I think he's working on the second one. I mean, Janine is constantly creating work, and so it's just it was a really good group of people in the indies are just like killing it with work.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So 5 years,
Brennan,
that's my magic wish.
Brennan, jump in, man.
I'm going to take us in a new direction. I almost just asked you what I should do, but you're not the boss of me. So,
Oh, someone's getting sassy. She fuck you up, dude.
I think that's spicy.
One thing that came up a few times already was the idea of monsters. You making your own monsters, the role of monsters, who is the monster. So I'm curious, and kind of fill this in any way you like with your background, with your experience in horror, where you grew up, where you live now. What informs your idea of what a monster is?
People.
That's a good question.
People. I mean, oh, I watched a lot of creature features growing up. Watched a lot of creature features. I watched a lot of supernatural and paranormal horror. But I grew up in inner city Chicago. I still live in the same neighborhood I grew up in. My neighborhood is very different than when I grew up here. The neighborhood's changed, but I grew up with. I've seen it all. I've had friends die from gang and gun violence. Um, I've seen a lot of good people hurt just for existing, and so I think that informs when I create a monster. Um, I think of that tragedy. I think of that potential and how just they just don't care. Like a real monster just does not care. There is no empathy. They do not care. They do not look at us, at other humans as something with feelings. They don't care, and they are completely okay with obliterating our existence. It's terrifying. Whether that is another human monster or whether that is a creature, a supernatural being, or paranormal being. But a true monster to me is something that is relentless and does not.
This comes to mind all of a sudden.
Yep, the lipstick killer. And I said I did a lot of work in true crime and exploring crime, and I still feel like I am a genre blending author. I take different genres and I just throw them together and I see what happens. And just like go. But I feel like my base is always going to be horror, then followed by crime and mystery. Um, but exploring true crime and what other human beings do to other human beings for a variety of reasons. It's monstrous. It's terrifying.
Mm. No, I think that's a good segue into poetry. Now, when you work on a collection like Into the Forest and all the way through, or even Crime Scene, do you find that writing poetry, is it therapeutic? Is it emotionally devastating? Is it just this awkward? Basically, do you feel like you have to write it, or I don't know, how does it affect you?
So this is going to sound like I'm an unwell person, but when I write poetry, I get in a very hypnotic state. I want to say it's a very different I know when I'm in that mental state. And so the way I've described it is writing novels is math, it's logic, it's reason, and making sure everything adds up. And writing poetry is like music. I have to feel it. And so when I write a poetry collection, I get in this weird sorry if I'm using these types of words, but I purposefully get in this hypnotic state. I will consume as much of the theme or the idea, and I will write it in this like manic marathon. And so Into the Forest was, I made myself very unwell because what I would do, I would take one case and I would read every single article, watch every single newsreel, watch every video on YouTube that I can find. I would become so overwhelmed with the tragedy of that case until I was obsessed with it and I couldn't think about anything else. And then I would write. Crime scene, I read the epic. I went and I read the Iliad and the Odyssey and these epic poems and started researching epic poetry and its history. And I just became in the state where that's all I could think about. And so I get into the state where it's all I can think about. And then I sit and I just write it. That makes sense. But I know it's a very different, I know when I'm in my poet brain versus my fiction writer brain. It's a very different brain. And Jared knows, my partner's like kind of like, he'll know when I'm writing poetry. He's like, oh, you're writing poetry. I'll see you later. It's different. He knows it's a different, like I'll start pacing and it becomes very, I don't know, it's almost like this meditation or this ritual that I kind of get in.
Peter Straub to me is like the most poetic writer in novels, in novel form. He's very poetic with his words. That's really it. There's nothing else I have to say about it. But we talked about Peter Straub earlier, and just wanted to throw that out there. He is also a poet, for those that don't know.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to throw out, kind of, and it ties in with you, getting just in this headspace where you're just basically, you've immersed yourself in what the subject matter is going to be, and then you're just creating. You wrote an essay for writing poetry in the dark called "This Is Not a Poem," where you talked a lot about free form, and I would highly recommend that people pick up that book and read it, because you talk you have a lot of interesting things to say about why free form. But the what kind of appeals to me is that idea of, if you are going to write poetry, you don't have to necessarily adhere to this certain form, that you can just kind of take those emotions, those feelings that from your experience you've immersed yourself in, and, for lack of better words, create. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about free form, whether or not you're touching on those same things or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, This Is Not a Poem. So that poem was, that essay dealt with poetry as how writing poetry or poetry for social change. And so I looked at Langston Hughes and I looked at several poets, and I looked at what they were saying, the way they were saying it, and I even talked about like protest signage. And I made this equation where even protest signs are poetry, because you get into this emotional state and you just want this clear, crisp message communicated to the world. And I was looking at the different formulas of poetry and how they can be so structured, and then it's stuffy, and that's what that was the comment. I've noticed that's the commentary with my poetry very frequently, like, oh, your poetry was approachable. I understood what you were saying. And I think I'm grateful that people felt that way, because I felt like, at least for my poetry, at least with Into the Forest or Crime Scene, I had certain messages that I was trying to convey, and I'm happy that people were able to walk away with those messages, which were, Into the Forest was about missing and murdered women, particularly missing and murdered women of color in the U.S., and why aren't we making this a bigger issue? Crime Scene, it is the devastation that crime just continues to happen, and it's like this avalanche of awful things. And I felt like we shouldn't put so many rules on creating. That's not creating, right? There should be flexibility. We should, and I take issue with critiques, many critiques, and I have a Master's of Fine Arts in writing from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and my graduate advisor, it was Jesse Ball, and his process of critique was the asking method, and that's what I implement in my mentoring. I ask you, the author, what your goal is. I don't understand why consuming art has become, this is wrong because of the X, or this I didn't like. Okay, fine, you didn't like it, but whatever. I don't think it bothers me when someone says the artist is wrong. The artist is never wrong. You know what you're trying to accomplish. Like, the other person doesn't know what you're trying to accomplish. That makes no sense to me. If you don't have to engage and enjoy every single piece of art, and that's fine. But to say the artist is wrong is an abomination. The artist is never wrong. The artist knows what they're doing.
It's very presumptuous.
If it didn't come across for you, that's fine. And that's why when I thought of poetry, I like free form poetry because it breaks all the rules. You can go and explore how you want and how you feel. And then within that context of exploring poetry as for social change, I thought that was a great medium for like exploring these very intense issues that we're dealing with.
Mm. I also would throw out, if anybody is considering that book, because it is a great book. It's full of like just wonderful essays, and I'm only about a quarter of the way through it, but I'm learning so much. It's a topic. Speculative poetry is a topic I'm constantly trying to better my understanding of, and this is a great book for it. But I love the fact that you took that Langston Hughes poem, which is, that's something that I think every high schooler reads that. And you kind of say, okay, now let me tell you how this could be speculative poetry. Let me tell you how this could be horror poetry. And you're convincing. I bought it.
That raisin in the sun and how it shrivels, and it's, and that poem, it's just so, pull it up. Y'all keep talking because I need to pull it up, because it is just the weight of it. I don't think, in high school you read it and you just kind of remember. I remember in high school, one of the reasons I love poetry. I had this amazing teacher in high school, and every week we would have to memorize a poem, walk to the front of the class, and recite it from memory. And that made me kind of appreciate poetry and the delivery of poetry. And I think it's important also. I don't know if I mentioned this in the essay. I think it's important to read your poetry out loud. So Harlem, or what we call a dream deferred. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And it's that ending where it's every single time I read it, it's like this gut punch. And you feel it in your you feel it here, you feel it in your stomach, and it's just, what he's talking about. You know that he's talking about the pain of a people and this idea. And in that essay, I tried to correlate it to speculative poetry and how it's horror. He's talking about something that's very horrible. The wants, the were talking earlier, I hope I mentioned this, but it's something as simple. People just want to have the right to exist and to love and to be happy. And there's always these other people that are trying to prevent people from just being happy, and that's hard. There's real monsters out there that are just trying to keep people from existing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that really lends into what Tananarive Due said in an interview somewhere that I read, where she says she's pretty known for saying that Black history is Black horror. And so that's what I really think about. Because when I was introduced to these poems, I mean, of course, as looking at them through the lens of the Black experience or my own experiences, as a Black woman, both, like, of course, and as a horror fan, I'm like, yeah, well, of course that's horror. Of course it's horror. I'm always willing to argue that point, like, to the end of time. So it's always exciting to see when other artists are like, I get it, I get that, and understanding that things like this, that these do fit very well into that whole horror arena.
Most definitely. It's the experience of Black America is completely, you look at it and it's even to, it, throughout history today, it's this constant push on people that just want to exist, and they just want to love, and they just want to be happy. And it's other systems and other people that just continue to push against that. And that's hard. That's hard when you're trying to, like, prevent somebody from just existing. And it's like, I think that's something that I think that I'm happy that is being explored so much in horror today, and I hope that it continues being explored, and not just within the indie community, but like larger platforms. And I think that's still the push. Like, we need these stories discussed, and there's just so much. Like, I think of, like, I write a lot about Chicago, and I think about, there's like multiple instances of, like, I mean, there was a quote from Martin Luther King when he marched in Chicago, and he was just like, the specific neighborhood that he was in Chicago, he was like, they were the meanest in this part of Chicago that to me than they were in the South at some point. And I was like, that's how, and this is Chicago is one of the most segregated cities, and for many reasons. And there's displacement and there's disinvestment in communities, and these things ripple across time and generations, and these are horror stories that need to be told.
And I think that ties in with what we were talking about initially with the idea of freeform. These are stories that need to be told, and the idea that poetry is supposed to meet certain guidelines, that there's supposed to be this many couplets, this many, syllables per line, whatever. I mean, I absolutely hate the word gatekeeping, because I think it's so overused and misused. But to a degree, it's there. The idea that, the almost elitism that poetry is supposed to be this, it's supposed to be that. But no, I mean, what it is at its base is it's supposed to be, you mentioned the protest signs. It's emotion boiled down to kind of this common base, the simplest way you can put it to evoke the most emotions. And that's, like, I loved the comparison to protest signs, because I think that's what it is. Let's see if we can conjure an emotion. Let's see if I can put what I feel in my heart into words and then pare it down so that I can communicate it to another human. And there is no fucking couplet for that. There is no rhyme scheme for that. There is no correct way to write your feelings for that.
And if you want to feel poetry, I mean, just Google Amanda Gorman, and she has, she performs some of her poetry on YouTube, and it's just, you feel what she's saying. And I think that's so, it's just, poetry and emotion are just so, and that's why I love writing poetry, because you can just condense the essence of what you're trying to communicate across a long novel into these tiny little sentences that are just so crisp and so clear, and people will walk away with an emotional, physiological response just to the few little, that Langston Hughes poem, just in those few lines. He communicated so much, and we all felt that. So poetry is it's powerful. It's absolutely powerful. It's an honor to be able to write and publish poetry and to work with like people like Stephanie Wojtowicz, who was an amazing editor. Sarah Tatlinger is another great poet, speculative poet. John Lawson is another poet that people forget. Yeah, he writes short stories and other things, and he was our Horror Writers Association president now, but he's a poet as well. So
Very cool stuff. Brandon, I think now's the time for the what was that? Okay.
That's Cena's roof caving in. That means we're done.
I hope not. I like her. For the outro portion, currently reading. Cena, what are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? I haven't started anything yet, but I was going to start Jess Laurie's book, Unspeakable Things. So it is.
It's got any cover.
Yeah, inspired by a terrifying true story, a heart-pounding novel of suspense about a small Minnesota town where nothing is as quiet or as safe as it seems. And so she likes, what is it? I like that. I saw her at the Midwest Writers Conference, and she said something. Oh gosh, what was it? I forgot what the question was, but she said something to the effect of all writers should have a theme. And she said, my theme is secrets. I write about secrets. I thought that was so cool. And so I've been interested in, we share the same editor at Amazon Publishing. And so I thought that was such a cool idea. I write about secrets. And so I've been trying to think about like, what's my writer theme? And I'm like, why write about Chicago? I always write about Chicago and like and history and how history continues to repeat itself. So I don't know. I'm trying to boil that down. But think about that. If you had a writer theme, what would your writer theme be?
Folklore. That's yours.
Honda, what would yours be?
I mean, like I've read quite a bit of your work and a lot of folklores, and it's really cool how you interweave it. I especially love how in Children of Chicago you're talking about Lewis Carroll at one point, and you're just talking about all these people that come or are from Chicago, and I don't know, you and Alma Katsu do it really. You guys do something special with it. I don't know.
Honda, what do you think your writer theme is? If you had a writer theme.
I don't know. I think I would have to say my theme was Black Girl Weird. I mean, it's
not a bad theme to have.
That's a cool one.
Right?
Yeah.
Brandon, I can't take that one, so all yours.
Brennan, what's your writer theme?
I was going to go with Black Girl Weird, but I now have to kind of.
I told you we can't take that.
Found family is something I consistently see popping up in my work, unbeknownst to me. So,
mine's dead kids because that's my biggest nightmare. Sorry, Cena.
Oh no! I mean, that's scary. Pet Cemetery stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. Just if my kid died, this isn't anything special with other parents, but
this is where horror writers' minds go. Right? That's why we write the stuff. That our minds go to these crazy places.
Basically, I'm like writing Pixar movies, but they're the graphic versions of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you had a writer theme, everyone, that's your homework. What's your writer theme?
That's a good one. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I like that. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay, so Rhonda, I forgot the question. What are you currently reading?
Well, okay, so I actually on the plane ride home last night, I read Reluctant Immortal
Ooh,
by
I
Gwendolyn.
love that one.
That's a great one.
Yeah, and I just handed it off to my daughter, who is like the biggest, second biggest reader in the house. So I was really excited about that. I bought a couple of other books because, of course, you just can't plunk a writer in a bookstore and just be like, "Hey, talk about your books," because this writer is going to go buy books. So I bought like 5 or 6 books.
That's some serious restraint.
Yeah, exactly.
Only 5 or 6.
Right, yeah, because I was all over the shelves and I was like, well,
Yeah.
let me just start a stack, right? So so yeah, I just finished that one and it was really good. It was like the perfect plain like read.
Excellent. Brennan, what are you currently reading?
I mentioned this one, Writing Poetry in the Dark. I'm just kind of reading an essay a day and taking it all in. It's such good stuff. I mentioned Cena is in it. It has Claire C. Holland, Jessica McHugh, Donna Lynch, Sarah Tantlinger, Lisa Candoral, Alessandro Manzetti. That's just it. Like I said, I'm only a quarter of the way through it, but it's just brimming with brilliance. Definitely recommend that if you want to improve your poetry writing or learn the first thing about it, like me. I'm also reading Sleepwalk by Dan Shawn, who we will have on in a couple weeks. It's cool. It's definitely, I don't know that I know I wouldn't put it in horror, which is very atypical for this show, but it has this kind of like bleakness of humanity that you'd find in Chuck Palahniuk's work, mixed with this like almost kind of blanketed with this absurdity that you'd find in Kurt Vonnegut. So I mean, it's those are two authors I love. So it's I'm digging it.
You're supposed to ask me, Brennan.
I don't care.
Okay, you're being a smart.
All right, Patrick, what are you?
Smart ass. I'm reading Up Jump the Devil: The Real Life of Robert Johnson. It's a nonfiction book about a super well-known blues musician, but it's really well researched and factual. It's like the go-to biography on Robert Johnson if you have interest in knowing who he is, or hey, that guy lived a weird life. He had a lot of bad shit happen to him. So I'll just leave it at that. It's really interesting. I think it's worth people's time. Cena, where can people follow you?
They can follow me on Twitter, Cynthia Pelayo. I am also on Instagram, Cynthia Pelayo author. I'm on TikTok. I don't want to do stuff. Cynthia Pelayo author on there. And then my website, I will update it one day. It's cynthiapelayo.com. But yeah, I'm around.
Rhonda, where can people follow you?
Yeah, I'm still on Twitter. I'm gonna always haunt Twitter at R Jackson Joseph. But I really do, like, I know y'all been hearing me say this like years and years and years, but it's really true now. I have an author website. Like, can you believe it? Can you believe it? Finally.
I didn't know that. That's cool. What is it?
Yeah, RhondaJacksonJoseph.com. I did not put it together. I can take no credit for that.
Wait, you're gonna leave saying who put it together?
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I work for the promo team, Heartfelt Promos. And so Regina over there is like, that's the most wonderful promo person. She never yells at me. And she has never, like, after all these years, I mean, I've worked with her for literal years, like 10 or 12 years or so. And she's never said to me, you better hurry up and get a site done. She just kind of waited until I finally went, I think we should do this. And she was like, it is go time. And so she went.
That's awesome. Brennan, where can people follow you?
Well, I mean, mostly I just drive to work at schools, and you don't want to follow me there because that'll land you on a list. Brennan LaFaro on Twitter, as long as it exists, or probably a better option is brennanlafaro.substack.com is my mailing list where emails go out.
Very good.
We're going down with the ship, aren't we? We're just going to stay on.
We are going down. I'm going down with the ship.
I was thinking about it today. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go down with the ship. Let's go.
Yeah. I don't know. Like Instagram, I can't figure it out. I tried. not hard, but I tried.
If you want to follow me, you can follow me at PRMCDONOUGH. That's PR McDonough. Pretty much any social media platform or the show, dead_headspace. Final question, final thoughts, Cena.
Final thoughts. My roof didn't cave in, so that's good. I want Rhonda to talk quickly about her latest release. That's what I want.
Okay, well, yes. So yes, this collection is kind of growing legs, y'all. I'm really surprised about that. Okay, so Cena, so Patrick and Brennan are very awesome. Last week, I literally forgot that I even wrote a book. Like, I swear, I was so deep in fangirling over Tananarive Due. I really forgot. And I was like, oh, you kind of did do that. I forgot about it until they reminded me. So yeah, it's a horror short story collection. It is getting some really good reviews, and I'm really excited about that. But I think I'm most excited about the fact that people who read it actually see these women. Like, they see the characters, and the characters resonate with them. And I mean, that's all we do as writers, right? We just want people to feel us, feel the people that we write about.
I'm excited. That's great news. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Rhonda, any final thoughts?
I think I'm gonna do a twofer. I think that was my final thought. But it's really exciting to talk to Cena and hear about what's coming up next. So I mean, I'm just really over here just clapping. Go on, girl. Go on, girl.
Oh yeah, let's get a recap of what's coming up next and what has come out, because I don't think we've done that yet.
Crime Scene is out from Raw Dog Screaming Press. That came out in October. Crime Scene, that's a narrative totem verse. Oh my gosh, I love you people. Thank you so much. Thank you. January from Polis Loteria is out. It's a reprint of my 2010 Latin American folklore short story collection that is out January. In March, The Shoemaker's Magician is out from Polis Books. That is the second book in the Chicago saga, which is not a sequel, but it's another story in the universe, and it's about fables. And then in spring of 2024, Funeral at Clark Street Bridge, my Chicago Gothic horror romance comes out. And it's the story I've been wanting to tell for very, very, very long. It's an adaptation of The Little Mermaid.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, love it.
I can't wait for that. Brennan, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I think that this episode referenced Dean Koontz the second most amount of times of any episode, after Josh Mallerman threatening to drive to his house and make sure he was okay because we hadn't heard from him in a while. But for whatever reason, I feel like that's notable. So people should buy Crime Scene. People should buy Children of Chicago before The Shoemaker's Magician comes out. I don't know if people can still buy We Came from an Island, but if they can, they should. Because that was a really excellent collection, and we had so much to talk about, we didn't even mention it. But fabulous stuff. And of course, it's funny that it's been so long coming for you to have a solo episode, because you've been on like 27 times at this point for different panels and this and that and the other thing.
Am I the person that's been on the most? I feel like I've probably been on the most. I'm always like, hey, bro.
I think you and Ron Kelly are duking out, but yeah, it's you're up there. You're absolutely up there. You've been on a lot of panels. You came on to do a reading at some point. So yeah, you're like you and Ron Kelly are like, Steve Martin and John Goodman hosting Saturday Night Live.
Now we need a tag team, Ron and I, on an episode.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Tell us who you want to talk to. Not now. Sorry, that was set up like.
We'll wait.
Come on. I got a bedtime. All right. So my final thoughts are, I'm very happy that we finally did this. We all very much so love you. And it's just, we clearly love your work. And I said it when I first read Children of Chicago. Of any author I've read, your work is similar to Thomas Harris. in the regard of just like being so lean, being so cut, coming from a journalistic background. And I only say that in the highest regards, but you got your own style. But that's just to say that's this one reader's opinion, and I think that you are someone that whoever's listening to this hasn't read you yet should. All the books that Brennan said, or others he didn't mention. I think he covered them all, though. I don't know, maybe he didn't. Yeah, that's thank you, Rhonda, for coming on here. We love talking to you too, and I love the fact that this book is getting. I'm going to beat Brennan to it. That this book right here is getting so much attention.
Yes.
And I hope it continues. Do we mention the name, the title? Hell hath no sorrow like a woman. I don't think we said it. Like a woman haunted. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think so. No.
Senator R.J. Joseph. Tanana Review may even read it because of that. So I hope she does.
Yeah, I would just die, really.
You hear that, Patrick? You killed her.
No, I don't want to do that. Rhonda's nice. All right, fuck you, Brennan. You've been a dick this episode. Rhonda City, you've been lovely. Fuck you, Brennan. No, just kidding. That's not how I ended it.
No, it's a terrible way to end it.
Yeah, no, but seriously, this has been fun. It's been real fun.
Hanging out. I mean, wait, this is what we've been doing, just hanging out.
Yeah, that's it. And listeners, you make choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking us. Fuck you, Brennan.